88,905 people. 8 years of watching. Little sensors strapped to their wrists, quietly writing down every scrap of light that fell across their eyes, all day and all night, for years on end. And when the numbers finally came back and somebody added them all up, a very peculiar thing fell out. The people who bathed in the brightest light after dark, after the sun was long gone, were up to 34% more likely to be dead by the time the study closed. And the people who caught the most light during the day, with nothing else about their lives changed, were up to 34% less likely to be dead. Same study. Same pile of human beings. One number climbing, one number sinking, and both of them hanging on nothing but this, with the light landed on the eyes, and at what hour. Now that is a strange thing. That is a clue lying right out in the open, in broad daylight you might say, and nobody has bothered to tell you what it means. So I want to go looking. I don't want to be handed the answer, I want to chase it down. Because think about what that number is really saying. It isn't a pill. It isn't a surgery. It isn't some rare mineral you have to mine out of a mountain. It is the free stuff. The ordinary light that falls on your face every single morning, whether you ask for it or not. And somehow, that free stuff is tangled up with how long you live. How on earth could that be? What could possibly be going on inside a person that turns a little morning sunshine into years? Let me tell you, when I see a result like that, my first reaction is suspicion. Good, healthy suspicion. Because it sounds like magic, and I don't believe in magic. So the honest thing to do, the only thing to do, is to ask, all right, what do we actually know? Not what sounds nice. What do we know, piece by piece, that could build a bridge from a beam of light to a longer life? And if we can't build that bridge, then maybe the whole thing is a coincidence and we throw it out. That's the deal. That's how you play this game fairly. So let's start close to home. Let's start with something you can feel in your own body tomorrow morning. Here is the first clue, and it's a good one, because it tells us the body is already keeping time before you've done a single thing. When you wake up, in the first half hour or so after your eyes open, something fires off inside you like an alarm you didn't set. Your body dumps a surge of a hormone called cortisol into your blood. And I don't mean a little trickle. On average, it climbs about 50%. In some people, it jumps by 3/4. If you catch it in the saliva, it goes from around 15 units at the moment of waking up to around 23 units just 30 minutes later. It peaks somewhere around 30 to 45 minutes after you open your eyes, and then it settles back down. This happens in roughly 3/4 of healthy adults, like clockwork, every single morning. They even gave it a name. The cortisol awakening response. Now stop and appreciate how odd that is. Nobody rings a bell. You don't decide to do it. You could be asleep in a cave with no idea what time it is, and still, a piece of your brain leans over and pours out this chemical wake-up signal right on schedule. So the body already has a morning alarm. It's built in. And cortisol, despite its bad reputation, isn't the villain here. In the morning, it's the thing that gets you up and moving, that sharpens you, that says the day has begun. Go. It's the starting gun. But a starting gun is only useful if it goes off at the right moment. Fire it too late, fire it at midnight, fire it out of step with the world outside, and now the whole race is a mess. So already I'm sniffing at something. If the body has this beautiful internal alarm, what sets it? What tells it that now, this particular now, is morning? Because the clock inside you does not have a window. It's sitting in the dark, in the warm dark of your skull. It cannot see the sunrise. Something has to carry the news into it. Hold on to that. We'll need it. Let's follow the next clue outside. Let's go stand in the yard. Picture 2 mornings. In the first, you wake up and you stay inside, and you turn on every lamp in the living room. Bright house. Cheerful. You can read the small print on a cereal box, no trouble. In the second morning, you step out the back door and just stand there in the open, under the sky. Now here's the question that matters, and it's a question almost nobody thinks to ask, because to your eye, the two mornings feel about the same. Both are bright, both let you see just fine. So how different could they really be? The answer is outrageously different. Not a little, not twice as much. We are talking about a canyon between them. The light in a normal room, an office, a living room, is somewhere around 50 to 500 lux. Lux is just the word we use to measure how much light is actually landing on a surface. An office might sit around 50 to 180. A cozy living room, maybe 200. And you think, well, that's plenty, I can see everything. Now here's the part that should knock you back. Direct light from a clear morning sky is roughly 90,000 to 120,000 lux. 90,000 against 200. Let that sink in. Step out your door and you are standing in something like 500 times more light than you had in your bright, cheerful living room. And it doesn't feel like 500 times, it feels like, oh, it's a nice day. That's the trick your eyes play on you. Because your eyes are wonderful at adjusting. They squeeze themselves down, they open themselves up, they work hard to make every scene look about equally bright to you so you can go about your business. Your eyes are lying to you about the raw amount of light, and they're lying for a good reason so you can function. But that lie hides the truth of the situation completely. And you might think, all right, I'll just buy a really strong lamp. Fair enough. So you go get one of those punishingly bright indoor lights, the kind that makes you squint. That'll get you to maybe 4,000, 5,000 lux. Better. Much better than the living room. And still, you are nowhere close. You are down by a factor of 20 or more compared to just standing outside under the open sky. You cannot buy your way to sunlight with a lamp. The gap is not a gap you close with a switch. It's 2, even 3 orders of magnitude. That's the language physicists use when a number is so much bigger than another that comparing them feels almost silly. 100 times. 1,000 times. So here we have two clues sitting next to each other, and they're starting to lean toward one another like they want to talk. Clue 1. The body has a morning alarm, cortisol, and it needs to be told when now is. Clue 2. The difference between inside and outside isn't a matter of taste or comfort. It's a physical chasm in the sheer quantity of light. 500 times. And the question sharpens. Is that chasm the thing? Is the body's clock somehow counting the light? And does it need a truly enormous amount, an outdoor amount, before it believes you that morning has come? But wait. Here's where it gets genuinely puzzling. And this is the part that kept nagging at me. If the eye is doing all this careful lying, all this adjusting, so that 200 lux and 90,000 lux both look like a perfectly ordinary bright scene to you, then how does the body ever find out the real number? If your conscious vision has thrown the information away deliberately to keep the world looking steady, who inside you is still keeping the honest count? Somebody is. Somebody has to be. Because that wrist sensor study didn't measure how bright the world looked to those people. It measured how much light was really there. And that real number, the one your eyes hide from you, is the one that tracked with living or dying. So we've got a mystery inside a mystery now. There's an alarm that needs setting. There's a flood of light outside that dwarfs anything indoors. And there's some hidden accountant in the body who ignores what you see and counts the raw light anyway. 3 threads. And I promise you they tie together, but not in the way you'd guess. Because the obvious answer, the one you'd reach for first, the answer that says it's about the pretty colors of sunrise, or it's about getting past your window glass, those answers are traps. They're sitting there looking obvious. And they're wrong, and I'm going to show you exactly how they're wrong before I show you what's right. That's the fun of it. But before any of that, we have to deal with the strangest character in this whole story. Because to count light the way the body counts it, you need an eye. And it turns out you have one you've never heard of. Not the eye you're thinking of. A second one, hidden inside the first, doing a job so quiet that for the whole history of biology nobody even knew it was there. Picture a laboratory in the year 2002. David Burson, Felice Dunn, Moroharu Takao, They're doing something that sounds almost absurd. They take retinal ganglion cells, the wiring cells, the cells whose entire supposed job is to gather signals from the rods and the cones and ship them down the optic nerve to the brain. Messengers. Postal workers. Nobody's business but to carry the mail. And these three, they cut those cells off from the rods and the cones entirely. No image cells feeding them, they isolate them, sitting alone in a dish. And then they shine light on them. Now, by every rule anybody knew, nothing should happen. A messenger with no message to carry just sits there, but the cell fires. It responds to the light all by itself. It sees. Not pictures, mind you. It can't tell a face from a fence. But it feels the light directly in its own body because it's stuffed with a photopigment of its own, a molecule called melanopsin. And that was the moment biology learned something it had somehow missed for its entire existence. You do not have two kinds of light detector in your eye. You have three. Rods for dim light, cones for color. And this third thing, this quiet third character, that doesn't care about seeing at all. It only cares about how much light is out there, and it reports that number to a place deep in the brain that runs the clock. And here's what tickles me about it. These cells, these intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells, they are not the majority. They're not even close. Out of all the ganglion cells in your retina, they make up something like 3 to 5%. A tiny minority. 3 or 4 cells out of every 100 doing a job so different from all their neighbors that it took us until the 21st century to catch them at it. You've got 100 million receptors busy painting you a gorgeous full-color movie of the world, and off in the corner, this little band of a few percent isn't watching the movie at all. It's watching the light meter. It's asking one question over and over all day long. Is it day or is it night? How much? And it does not care what you're looking at while it asks. So now the hidden accountant has a face. That's who's counting the raw light. That's the second eye inside your eye. And the instant you know it's there, a new question walks right up and taps you on the shoulder. What is this thing actually listening for? Because a light meter has to be tuned to something. Your radio is tuned to a station. Your ear is tuned to a range of pitches. So what note is melanopsin listening for? And the answer to that is the first thing in this whole story that genuinely stopped me cold. Melanopsin is most sensitive to light at a wavelength of about 480 nanometers. That's in the blue, sliding toward cyan, not red, not deep violet, a particular blue. Fine, you say, it likes blue. So what? Well, hold that number, 480 nanometers. Now let's walk outside and look at the thing that's been flooding the yard with light since before there were eyes to catch it. The sun. The sun is a ball of glowing gas, and its surface, the photosphere, sits at a temperature of about 5,778 Kelvin. Any hot object glows, and the color it glows depends only on how hot it is. A poker in the fire goes from dull red to orange to white as it heats. There's a law for this. A clean little law worked out by Wilhelm Wien. It says the peak color a hot body puts out is just a fixed number divided by its temperature. You take that fixed number, 2.898 thousandths of a meter Kelvin, and you divide by 5,778, and out pops a wavelength. Where does the sun pour out most of its light? Right around 500 nanometers. Blue-green, almost exactly where your melanopsin is listening. Sit with that for a second, because it's outrageous. Here is a molecule sitting in the back of your eye, and here is a star 93 million miles away burning at nearly 6,000 degrees. And the color the star shines brightest and the color the molecule listens for hardest are practically the same color. The detector is tuned to the transmitter. The little cell in your retina is a radio dialed without anybody dialing it to the exact frequency the sun broadcasts on. Now I have to be honest with you the way I'd want somebody to be honest with me. Is that a deep cosmic law, or is it a coincidence dressed up in a nice suit? I don't think anybody can hand you the final word on that. Life grew up under the sun. Every creature that ever opened an eye did it in this particular light. So maybe it's no wonder the sensor drifted toward the brightest part of what was available. That's not magic, that's just evolution doing bookkeeping over a few 100 million years. But whether you call it destiny or accounting, the fit is real, and it's beautiful, and it tells you the body isn't listening for light in general, it's listening for daylight in particular, for the specific signature of the sun. And that right there is where the traps I warned you about spring open. Because once you know the clock loves blue light, your mind goes sprinting off toward two conclusions that both feel airtight and are both dead wrong. Here's the first trap. If it's blue the clock wants, and glass and windows are between you and the sky all day, then surely the villain is the window. Everybody's heard it. The glass filters out the good wavelengths. Sit by a window all you like, the story goes, the blue you need got strained out on the way in, like pulp caught in a sieve. It sounds so reasonable. It's got that satisfying click of an explanation. And it's mostly a myth. Plain clear glass has been letting visible light through since the Romans were glazing windows, blue included. That's what clear means. A pane of ordinary window glass passes the blue wavelengths your melanopsin craves almost as happily as it passes the red ones. What glass mostly stops is ultraviolet and a bit of infrared, neither of which is the wavelength doing your circadian work. So if the color gets through the glass just fine, why on earth does everybody swear that sitting by a window doesn't do the job the way stepping outside does? Something is different about being indoors. The window story has the right observation and the wrong culprit. And to find the real culprit, we're going to have to go back and look at a number I set down earlier and stepped right past, but not yet. Because there's a second trap, and it's even prettier than the first, and I want you to fall into it a little before I pull you out. You wake up. You want that blue morning light the clock is hungry for. So you look at the obvious source, the sunrise, that gorgeous fat orange disk sitting on the horizon, the one poets have been swooning over forever. That's the morning sun. That must be the thing feeding your clock its breakfast of light. Right? Look at the color of it. It's orange. It's red. It is just about the least blue thing in the entire sky. The one wavelength your melanopsin cares about most is the one wavelength that reddened disk has the least of. So if the rising sun itself were the source, the timing would be a cruel joke. The clock wants blue, and the sunrise hands it red. So what's going on? Why is the morning disk red in the first place? This is Rayleigh scattering, and it's the same reason the whole sky is blue in the middle of the day. Air is full of tiny molecules, and those molecules are far better at kicking short blue wavelengths sideways than long red ones. Blue light comes barreling in from the sun, hits the air, and gets scattered all over the dome of the sky. That scattered blue, bounced around and coming at you from everywhere at once, is what makes the sky look blue. The reds mostly sail straight through without getting knocked around. Now at sunrise, the sun is sitting low, right down on the horizon, and its light has to plow through a huge slab of atmosphere to reach you, far more than at noon. Along that long path, so much of the blue gets scattered away that by the time the direct beam reaches your eye, the disk itself has been robbed of its blue and left glowing red. So here's the twist that undoes the trap. The blue didn't vanish, it got scattered out of the disk and spread across the sky. That blue-drenched dome overhead, the bright open sky away from the sun, that's your source. Not the pretty red disk everybody stares at. The disk is the decoy. The real signal is the whole glowing blue sky the disk is embedded in, and you don't even have to look at the sun to drink it in. Two traps then, both sprung, both false. It isn't the window straining out the color. It isn't the red disk feeding you the color. The color story keeps failing us, and it keeps failing us in a way that should be nagging at you by now. Every time we chase the wavelength turns out not to be the thing that breaks. The glass passes the blue. The sky is drowning in the blue. So if blue is everywhere, indoors through the glass and outdoors under the sky, then color cannot be what separates the yard from the living room. Something else is separating them. Something I told you at the very start and asked you to hold. A flood of light outside that dwarfs anything indoors. Let's finally go and count it. So let's count it. Stand in your yard on a clear morning, and the light pouring onto your face measures somewhere between 90,000 and 120,000 lux. Hold that number. Now walk back inside and stand under the brightest lamp in the room. Your ordinary living room sits near 200 lux. A well-lit office, maybe 50 to 180, and if you buy the fanciest, most blinding fixture money can put in a ceiling, you might reach 4 or 5,000. That is the top of the indoor world. 4 or 5,000 against 100,000. It is not close. It is not even the same conversation. Outside you are standing in a flood, and inside you are standing in a puddle, and the puddle is 2, sometimes 3, powers of 10 shallower than the flood. There it is. That is the culprit we have been circling this whole time. Not the color, not the glass, not the red disk on the horizon. It was the sheer quantity of light all along, the raw number of photons hitting that little third eye we found. Melanopsin is a sleepy sensor. It is slow and it is greedy. It does not stir for a puddle. It wants to be drowned before it fires the message to the clock. And the only thing on this planet that can drown it is the open sky. Now watch how everything we collected suddenly clicks into one machine. The greedy sensor, the melanopsin in those ganglion cells, sends its wire straight back to the suprachiasmatic nucleus, that clump of neurons the size of a rice grain that keeps the master time. When you flood the sensor at dawn, the master clock hears, loud and clear, this is morning, this is the top of the day, and it does not keep that news to itself. It sends the hour down into your liver, into your kidneys, into the fat under your skin, into cells that will never see a single ray of light, but which run little clocks of their own and have been waiting all night to be told what time it is. In animals given 3,000 lux every morning, the researchers watch those clock genes, the ones called PER2, swing harder in the brain and the liver and the kidney. The whole body's rhythm got taller, more confident. The activity swung higher and lower. Even the blood sugar rode a cleaner wave. One bright signal at the top of the retina, and organs you cannot feel start marching in better step. And here is the part that ought to give you a small shiver. That morning flood does not only ring the bell now. It sets a timer for tonight. When you soak the clock in bright light early, the clock counts forward, roughly 12 to 16 hours, and only then opens the tap on melatonin, the hormone that makes you drowsy. So the walk you take before breakfast is quietly buying you the sleepiness you will want long after dinner. Miss the morning flood, and the timer starts late or starts confused, and you find yourself wide awake at midnight wondering why. The dawn and the dark are two ends of one string, and your eyes tie the knot. So let me say the answer plainly, now that we have earned it. The thing to do is stupidly simple. Get yourself outside within the first hour of waking and let the open sky hit your eyes. On a bright day, 5 or 10 minutes is plenty. On a gray, overcast day, give it 15, 20, or a little more, because even a cloudy sky, dull as it looks, still hands you far more lux than your ceiling ever will. Do it outdoors. Not through the window. Not through the windshield of the car. Remember why. The glass was never stealing your blue. The glass steals your quantity. Every pane, every wall, every roof knocks that 100,000 lux down toward the puddle, and the greedy sensor goes back to sleep. And when the light is bright and rich in the short blue wavelengths that the sensor loves best, your body's own morning surge, that pulse of cortisol we started with, climbs higher than it would under weak reddish light. The physics of the color and the physics of the quantity finally pull in the same direction, and your wake-up signal rings like a struck bell. Now let me drag you back to that number I dropped on you cold at the very beginning, the one I refused to explain. Some scientists, led by Dr. Daniel Windred, along with Sean Kane and Andrew Phillips, strapped light sensors to the wrists of very nearly 89,000 people, grown men and women, and watched them live for about 8 years. 13 million hours of light, measured, not guessed. And when they sorted the living from the dead, a pattern fell out of the data that no one could wave away. The people who caught the most daylight during their days had something like a 17 to 34% lower risk of dying across that stretch. And the people who marinated in the most light at night, the bright, artificial, wrong-time light, carried a 21 to 34% higher risk. And this held up after they scrubbed out age, and sex, and how people ate, and how they moved. Light itself, the right light at the right hour and the wrong light at the wrong hour, was writing itself into how long these lives ran. Windred put it about as flatly as a scientist ever will. Seek the day, avoid the night, and you may push back disease and stretch the years. That is the puzzle from the opening, solved. The tiny morning act that moved those percentages was a face turned up to the sky. So why before breakfast and not after? Why did I make such a point of the empty stomach? For this you listen to Sechin Panda, whose lab helped uncover the melanopsin story in the first place, and who then spent years chasing a second clue. It turns out your body wants its food packed into a consistent window, something like 8 to 12 hours of the day, and left alone the rest. Feed the machine around the clock and its rhythms smear and sicken. Feed it in a tidy window and the rhythms hold, and in animals, metabolic disease can be stopped, even walked backward. And the sequence matters. Panda's counsel is to let the light come first. Wake, go out, drown the sensor, let the morning hormones do their rise and their fall, and only then, an hour or two on, break the fast. Light is the clock's first word of the day. Food is meant to be the second word, not the first. Put them in that order, and the whole system reads the morning the way it was built to read it. Put food first, in the dark, and you have told your liver a lie before your eyes ever told your brain the truth. And so we arrive back where we always seem to end up in these talks, staring at something absurdly small doing something absurdly large. Those light-catching cells are a rounding error in your eye. 3, maybe 5, out of every 100 ganglion cells. A sliver, a minority so small you would forgive nature for forgetting it. They send you no picture. You have never seen a single thing with them, and you never will. And yet that sliver, tuned across hundreds of millions of years to sit almost exactly on the peak of the sun's own glow, is holding a wire to the master clock, and through it to your liver and your blood and your sleep and, if that great pile of wrist data is telling the truth, to the length of the road you get to walk. The sun that made those cells is the same sun that still every single morning offers to set them right. The whole arrangement was waiting for you before you were born, and it costs nothing, and it asks only that you step outside and lift your face while the coffee is still too hot to drink. You spend a lifetime learning to look at the world with your eyes. It turns out the world has been quietly looking back, through a door you never knew you had, and asking only that you open it at dawn.